The soft glow of fairy lights strung across the backyard of the Miller family home cast an ethereal warmth on the scene. Laughter mingled with the gentle clinking of glasses. It was an engagement party, a celebration of love and future, a promise whispered under the vast, indifferent sky. Sarah Miller, radiant in a white lace dress, her auburn hair a cascade of joy, held Liam O'Connell's hand. Liam, her fiancé, a man whose easy smile and kind eyes had captured her heart 2 years ago, squeezed her fingers reassuringly. Their future, a tapestry woven with shared dreams, stretched out before them, seemingly endless and bright. Sarah's mother, Eleanor Vance, a woman of striking elegance even in her late 50s, moved among the guests with effortless grace. Her silver hair, meticulously styled, caught the light, and her laughter, a melodious chime, seemed to fill every corner of the garden. Eleanor had always been Sarah's anchor, her confidante, the steady presence in a world that often felt chaotic. Their bond was deep, forged through years of shared triumphs and quiet heartbreaks. Sarah watched her mother, a warmth spreading through her chest. This was perfect. This was everything she had ever wanted. The evening deepened, the air growing cooler, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine. Sarah, feeling a slight chill, excused herself to fetch a shawl from her bedroom. Liam was deep in conversation with her uncle, his back to her. Eleanor was by the dessert table, her attention momentarily diverted. Sarah ascended the stairs, her heart light with happiness. The house was quiet, a stark contrast to the lively garden below. She pushed open her bedroom door, expecting to find the familiar sanctuary of her private space. Instead, a scene unfolded before her that ripped the world from beneath her feet. The soft lamplight in the bedroom cast long shadows, illuminating a tableau of unimaginable betrayal. Her fiancé Liam and her mother Eleanor were in bed. The sight was a physical blow, stealing the air from Sarah's lungs, blurring her vision. The laughter from the garden, the clinking of glasses, the soft music, it all faded into a distant, mocking hum. Her mind reeled, struggling to process the impossible. Liam, the man who had pledged his life to her, entwined with Eleanor, her mother, the woman who had given her life. The scent of jasmine from the garden was replaced by the cloying sweetness of Eleanor's expensive perfume, now tainted with the bitter tang of deceit. Every detail, from the rumpled silk sheets to the discarded clothes on the floor, etched itself into Sarah's memory with brutal clarity. A cold, visceral rage, unlike anything she had ever known, began to bloom in Sarah's chest, spreading like wildfire through her veins. It was a silent, suffocating fury that choked off all other emotions. Her hands, which moments before had been warm with love, now felt cold, alien. Her vision sharpened, focusing on the two figures, their faces a blur of shame and shock as they scrambled to cover themselves. Eleanor's eyes, usually so warm and loving, were wide with terror, a silent plea for understanding that Sarah would not acknowledge. Liam's face was a mask of guilt, his usually kind eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic plea. He opened his mouth, but no sound escaped, only a silent, desperate plea for mercy that Sarah was in no mood to grant. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with unspoken accusations and the stench of broken promises. Sarah backed away slowly, her movements stiff, mechanical. The engagement ring on her finger, a symbol of their broken promise, felt like a burning brand, a searing indictment of her own naivete. Her mind, a whirlwind of shattered dreams, began to grasp for something, anything, to anchor itself to. The world was tilting, threatening to swallow her whole. She needed air. She needed to escape this suffocating reality. She stumbled backward, her hand blindly reaching for the solid, cold comfort of the bedside table. Her fingers closed around something hard, metallic. A gun, Liam's gun. He kept it for protection, a relic from his brief, unsettling stint in the military. A dark irony now. The cold steel felt strangely natural in her trembling grip, a conduit for the explosive emotions raging within her. The weight of the weapon in her hand was surprisingly grounding. It was cold, heavy, a tangible manifestation of the destructive power that now consumed her. The muffled sounds from the garden seemed to grow louder, mocking her with their oblivious joy. The betrayal, a searing wound, pulsed with an unbearable intensity. Sarah raised the gun, her hand steady despite the tremors that racked her entire being. Her finger found the trigger, a cold, smooth curve that promised an end to the unbearable pain, a final, desperate act to silence the screaming in her mind. "Sarah, please," Eleanor's voice. A raw whisper tore through the silence, laced with a desperate fear Sarah had never heard from her mother before. "Don't." Eleanor tried to rise, her movements clumsy, but Sarah's gaze, now sharp and unforgiving, held her frozen. Liam, his face ashen, a sickly green under the lamplight, lunged forward. A desperate attempt to disarm her, to undo the irreversible. His eyes, once so full of warmth for her, now held only stark terror. But it was too late. The shot echoed through the quiet house, a deafening roar that swallowed the world, a sound that would forever haunt the quiet suburban street. The gunshot ripped through the fabric of the celebratory evening, a discordant note that silenced the laughter in the garden below. A collective gasp rose from the guests, followed by a sudden, eerie hush, as if the very air had been sucked from the atmosphere. Inside the bedroom, the air crackled with the aftermath of violence, thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the metallic tang of fresh blood. Liam O'Connell lay on the floor, a dark, blossoming stain on his chest, his eyes wide and unseeing, fixed on the ceiling. His last breath, a ragged gasp, seemed to hang in the air. A final accusation. Eleanor Vance, her face a mask of horror, contorted in a silent scream, scrambled away from her daughter, a primal, animalistic sound tearing from her throat. Her elegant dress was disheveled, her silver hair askew, a stark contrast to the composed woman who had greeted guests just moments before. Sarah stood over Liam, the gun still clutched in her hand, her eyes wide, unseeing, fixed on the spreading crimson that stained the expensive carpet. Her mind, a chaotic maelstrom of shock and disbelief, refused to connect the act with its consequence, the trigger pull with the lifeless form before her. The world outside the bedroom door erupted. Guests, their faces contorted with fear and confusion, rushed into the house, their celebratory attire now stark against the unfolding tragedy. The festive lights in the garden seemed to dim, casting long, grotesque shadows. Whispers turned to shouts, shouts to panicked cries. Detective Marcus Thorne, a man whose wary eyes had seen too much of humanity's dark side, whose soul bore the scars of countless tragedies, was among the first to arrive. He had been a guest himself, a distant cousin of Eleanor's, enjoying the rare reprieve of a family gathering. A brief respite from the grim realities of his profession. Now, his professional instincts took over, a cold, efficient calm settling over him. A familiar shield against the chaos. He pushed through the stunned crowd, his gaze immediately drawn to the scene in the bedroom, his eyes quickly scanning for threats, for victims, for answers. "Nobody move," Thorne's voice, low and authoritative, cut through the rising panic like a surgeon's scalpel. He identified himself, his badge glinting in the dim light, a beacon of order in the unfolding pandemonium. "Call 911. Secure the scene. No one touches anything." His words, though calm, held an undeniable weight, compelling compliance. Eleanor, still on the floor, her body trembling uncontrollably, began to wail, a guttural sound of pure agony, a mother's lament for a life lost, and a daughter's future shattered. "My daughter, she shot him, she shot Liam." Her voice cracked, raw with grief and a profound, agonizing shame. Sarah remained motionless, the gun a heavy extension of her arm, her posture rigid, almost catatonic. Her mind, a fractured landscape, refused to connect the act with its consequence, the violence with the stillness. Thorne, assessing the situation with practiced precision, his movements deliberate and unhurried, moved cautiously towards her. His years of experience had taught him that a person in shock could be unpredictable, dangerous even to themselves. Sarah put the gun down. Slowly, his voice was a low murmur, a gentle coaxing rather than a command. Her eyes, devoid of emotion, like vacant pools, finally flickered to him. They. Her voice was a broken whisper, the words dissolving into a choked sob, a fragile attempt to articulate the unspeakable betrayal. It was a nightmare. I know, Thorn said, his voice gentle but firm, a steady anchor in her storm. Just put the gun down. He extended his hand, palm open, a gesture of trust. After what felt like an eternity, a lifetime compressed into agonizing seconds, Sarah's fingers loosened, and the gun clattered to the floor, its metallic clang echoing in the stunned silence. A final, mournful note. Thorn immediately secured the weapon, his gaze never leaving Sarah, his professional calm unwavering. The paramedics arrived. Their urgent movements a stark contrast to the frozen tableau of the room, their faces grim as they assessed the lifeless form of Liam. They worked quickly over him, their movements efficient, but the grim set of their faces spoke volumes, a silent pronouncement of the inevitable. He's gone, one of them announced, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, a mere statement of fact. Eleanor's wail intensified, a raw lament that pierced the hearts of everyone present, a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the night. Sarah, however, remained silent, a hollow shell, her face a blank canvas of shock and despair. The world had ended for her, not with a bang, but with a whisper of betrayal and the cold, unyielding weight of a gun. The engagement party, meant to be a joyous beginning, had become a devastating end, a stark reminder of the destructive power of betrayal and the enduring scars it leaves behind. The following days were a blur of interrogation rooms, hushed conversations, and the suffocating weight of public scrutiny. The Miller family home, once a beacon of warmth and happiness, transformed into a crime scene, then a mausoleum of shattered dreams. Yellow police tape, stark against the blooming jasmine, cordoned off the garden, a grim reminder of the violence that had erupted. Sarah, numb and detached, her spirit seemingly fled, answered Detective Thorne's questions with a chilling calm. She recounted the events of that night, her voice devoid of inflection, as if she were a spectator to her own tragedy, a distant observer of a horrific play. Her auburn hair, once so vibrant, now seemed dull, lifeless. Eleanor, on the other hand, was a wreck, her grief compounded by shame and the crushing burden of her secret. She tried to protect Sarah, to take the blame, to shield her daughter from the inevitable consequences, but the truth, stark and brutal, had already been laid bare by the scattered evidence and the raw confessions. The media, a ravenous beast, descended upon the quiet town, feasting on the sensational details of the case with a morbid hunger. News vans, their satellite dishes pointed skyward, lined the streets. Reporters, their faces grimly eager, thrust microphones at anyone willing to speak. Engagement party massacre, screamed the headlines, splashed across every newspaper and news website. Bride kills fiancé after mother, daughter love triangle revealed. The story, a twisted tale of betrayal and revenge, captivated the nation, a lurid drama unfolding in real time. Sarah became a symbol, a cautionary tale, her face, once so full of innocent joy, now plastered across every news channel, a haunting image of shattered innocence. The town, once a sleepy haven, found itself thrust into the harsh glare of the national spotlight, its quiet charm replaced by a morbid curiosity. During her first formal interrogation, Sarah sat across from Detective Thorne, the fluorescent lights of the room casting a harsh, unforgiving glow on her pale, drawn face. The air was thick with unspoken questions, with the weight of a life irrevocably altered. Thorne, observing her with a practiced eye, noted the subtle tremors in her hands, the slight flicker of pain in her otherwise vacant eyes. "You understand the gravity of the situation?" Sarah, Thorne began, his voice low, a steady counterpoint to the turmoil in the room. "This is a murder charge. The consequences are severe." Sarah nodded. A small, almost imperceptible movement. "I know." Her voice was flat, devoid of any emotion, as if the words were being pulled from a great distance. "Why did you do it?" Thorne pressed, his gaze unwavering. They betrayed me," she said, her voice barely audible, a fragile whisper of shattered trust. My fiancé, my mother, the two people I loved most in the world. She paused, a ragged breath catching in her throat. It was unbearable. Thorne leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table, his posture conveying a quiet intensity. Did you plan this, Sarah? Did you know they were having an affair beforehand? Was this a calculated act of revenge? Sarah shook her head, a slow, deliberate movement. No. I walked in on them. It was a shock. Her eyes, for the first time, flickered with a flicker of the pain that lay beneath her numb exterior, a brief glimpse into the raw wound of her soul. I didn't know what I was doing. I just reacted. It was like a part of me broke. Eleanor, questioned separately in a sterile room that mirrored her internal desolation, painted a picture of a desperate, impulsive act, a moment of madness. Her once elegant hands wrung together, her voice hoarse from crying. It was a mistake, she sobbed, the words punctuated by ragged gasps. A terrible, terrible mistake. Liam and I, it was brief, a moment of weakness. We never meant to hurt Sarah. She's my daughter. My only child. Her words were a desperate plea for understanding, for absolution. But the truth was more complicated. A tangled web of deceit and desire that had been spun over many months. The affair between Eleanor and Liam had been going on for months. A clandestine dance of forbidden desire, a dangerous game played in the shadows. It had begun subtly, with lingering glances and hushed conversations at family gatherings, blossoming into a full-blown affair fueled by a potent cocktail of loneliness, resentment, and a perverse thrill of transgression. Eleanor, feeling neglected by her emotionally distant husband, Richard, found solace in Liam's youthful charm and attention, his flattering words a balm to her bruised ego. Liam, drawn to Eleanor's sophisticated allure and the forbidden nature of their liaison, saw her as a stepping stone, a means to an end, a way to secure his future with Sarah's wealthy family. He believed Eleanor held sway over Sarah's inheritance, a twisted calculation that blinded him to the true cost of his actions, to the human lives he was so carelessly playing with. He saw her as a means to an end, a pawn in his grand scheme. Detective Thorne, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for human frailty, sensed the deeper currents beneath the surface, the unspoken motivations that drove the tragedy. He delved into Liam's past, uncovering a history of manipulative relationship, a pattern of exploiting vulnerable women for personal gain. He also discovered Liam's mounting gambling debts, a secret burden that had driven him to desperate measures, to a reckless pursuit of wealth. Liam had been pressuring Eleanor for money, his demands growing more insistent, hinting at exposing their affair if she didn't comply. Eleanor, trapped in a web of her own making, caught between her illicit desires and her fear of public humiliation, had become increasingly desperate, her fear of exposure overriding her love for her daughter, her moral compass spinning wildly. The plot thickened when Thorne interviewed Eleanor's estranged husband, Richard Vance. Richard, a stoic and reserved man, his face etched with years of quiet disappointment, revealed a long history of marital discord and Eleanor's growing dissatisfaction with their life. A quiet desperation that had simmered beneath the surface for years. He also disclosed that Eleanor had recently become obsessed with securing a significant portion of his estate, a desire that intensified, almost pathologically, after Liam entered their lives. Richard, suspicious of Liam's motives, sensing a predatory glint in the young man's eye, had hired a private investigator to look into his background. The report, detailing Liam's debts, his manipulative tendencies, and his history of preying on older, wealthy women, arrived too late, a grim testament to the slow, inexorable march of fate. The trial was a media circus, a spectacle of human drama and legal maneuvering. The courtroom packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and a stunned community, their faces a mixture of fascination and revulsion. Sarah, her face pale and drawn, a ghost of her former self, sat beside her defense attorney, a quiet figure amidst the storm, her gaze fixed on some distant point. as if trying to escape the harsh reality of her situation. Eleanor, her once regal demeanor shattered, her shoulders slumped in defeat, testified with a trembling voice, confessing to the affair and Liam's manipulation, her words a raw testament to her profound regret. She painted a picture of a woman driven to desperation, a mother consumed by guilt, her voice barely audible above the hushed murmurs of the courtroom. The prosecution, however, argued for premeditated murder, a cold, calculated act of revenge. They highlighted the presence of the gun, Liam's personal firearm, and Sarah's seemingly calm demeanor after the shooting, a chilling composure that belied the emotional turmoil she claimed. They presented a chilling narrative of a woman scorned, a calculated act of revenge, a deliberate choice to end a life. The defense countered with a plea of temporary insanity, arguing that Sarah, overwhelmed by the shocking betrayal, by the utter devastation of her world, had acted in a moment of profound emotional distress, her mind fractured by the unbearable pain. During the cross-examination, the prosecutor, a sharp, witted woman with an unyielding gaze, her voice like a finely honed blade, pressed Eleanor on the details of her affair with Liam. Mrs. Vance, you claim this was a brief affair, a moment of weakness. Yet, evidence suggests it spanned several months. You met him secretly, exchanged intimate messages, and even provided him with financial assistance. Does that sound like a fleeting indiscretion, Mrs. Vance, or a deliberate, ongoing deception? Eleanor's voice faltered, a choked sound caught in her throat. He was in trouble. He needed help. I was trying to help him. Her eyes pleaded for understanding, for a shred of compassion. Or perhaps, the prosecutor interjected, her voice rising, cutting through Eleanor's fragile defense. It was manipulating you, just as he manipulated your daughter. And you, Mrs. Vance, were complicit in his deception? A willing participant in a cruel charade, willing to sacrifice your daughter's happiness for your own selfish desires. For a fleeting moment of illicit pleasure, Eleanor broke down on the stand, her sobs echoing through the silent courtroom, a raw, guttural sound of pure anguish. Her confession, raw and painful, painted a picture of a woman trapped, her choices driven by a complex mix of fear, desire, and a desperate longing for validation, for a fleeting return to youth and desirability. The weight of her actions, of her betrayal, seemed to crush her. The defense then called Sarah to the stand. Her voice, though soft, carried an unexpected strength, a quiet resilience that surprised many in the courtroom, as she recounted the moment of discovery. I saw them, my mother, my fiancé, in my bed. It was like a nightmare, a scene from a horror film. My world just shattered. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed in, just crumbled. Her hands, clasped tightly in her lap, trembled almost imperceptibly. And then you picked up the gun, Sarah, the prosecutor stated, her voice accusatory, a cold, hard fact. You aimed it at Liam O'Connell and you fired. I don't remember, Sarah whispered, tears finally welling in her eyes, blurring her vision. It was all a blur. The pain, it was so intense. I just felt a searing pain, and then nothing, just a void. Her voice trailed off, lost in the depths of her despair. The trial dragged on for weeks, a grueling spectacle of shattered lives and broken trust, a relentless dissection of human frailty. The jury, a cross-section of the community, listened intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of sympathy and judgment, their expressions a mirror of the complex emotions swirling within the courtroom. The defense presented expert testimony on the psychological impact of betrayal, arguing that Sarah's actions were a direct result of the extreme emotional trauma she had endured, a momentary break from reality. The prosecution, however, maintained that Sarah's actions, though fueled by emotion, were still a conscious choice, a deliberate act of violence, a decision made in a fit of rage. A major plot twist emerged during the testimony of Liam's estranged brother David. David, a quiet and unassuming man, his face pale and drawn, revealed that Liam had recently confessed to him about his affair with Eleanor and his plans to extort money from her. a chilling glimpse into his brother's true character. He also disclosed that Liam had been secretly recording his conversations with Eleanor, intending to use them as leverage, a cruel insurance policy against her potential defiance. David, disgusted by his brother's actions, by his callous disregard for human feelings, had tried to warn Sarah, but his calls had gone unanswered, lost in the chaos of the engagement party preparations. He produced a voice recording, a chilling conversation between Liam and Eleanor, discussing their affair and Liam's financial demands. His voice cold and calculating, Eleanor's filled with a desperate fear. The recording, played in open court, sent shockwaves through the courtroom, a collective gasp rippling through the stunned audience. Eleanor's face crumpled, her last shred of dignity dissolving into despair, her body trembling uncontrollably. The jury listened in stunned silence as Liam's cold, calculating voice laid bare the depth of his manipulation, his true, predatory nature. The revelation shifted the narrative, transforming Liam from a victim into a predator, and Eleanor from a willing participant into a tormented pawn, caught in a trap of her own making. The air in the courtroom grew heavy with the weight of this new, shocking truth. The defense seized upon this new evidence, arguing that Sarah's actions, far from being premeditated, were a desperate act of self-preservation, a response to an unbearable emotional assault, a primal scream against an unimaginable violation. The judge, a stern but fair woman, her gaze unwavering, allowed the recording to be admitted as crucial evidence, acknowledging its profound impact on the perception of the events, on the very fabric of the case. The narrative of the crime had irrevocably changed. The jury deliberated for 3 agonizing days, the fate of Sarah Miller hanging precariously in the balance. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, every breath held, every movement scrutinized, as the community waited for the verdict. Finally, the verdict came, delivered in a solemn voice that echoed through the hushed courtroom. Not guilty. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom, followed by a wave of murmurs, a mix of relief and disbelief. Sarah, her face etched with exhaustion, collapsed into her attorney's arms, tears streaming down her face. A torrent of pent-up emotion finally released. Eleanor, her head bowed, remained motionless, her fate intertwined with her daughter's, yet forever scarred by her own choices, by the indelible mark of her betrayal. The judge, her voice solemn, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom, addressed the court. While the jury has found Ms. Miller not guilty of murder, this verdict does not absolve anyone of the profound moral failings that led to this tragedy. Lives have been irrevocably altered. Trust has been shattered. May we all learn from the painful lessons of this case, and may we strive for honesty and integrity in our own lives. The courtroom slowly emptied, leaving behind a lingering sense of sorrow and unanswered questions, a palpable residue of human suffering. Sarah, shielded by her attorney, slipped out a side door, avoiding the throng of reporters, their cameras flashing like predatory eyes. Her freedom, though granted, felt heavy, burdened by the weight of what had transpired, by the phantom presence of Liam and the shattered image of her mother. Eleanor, facing the consequences of her actions, was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life, her relationship with her daughter irrevocably damaged, perhaps beyond repair. The engagement party, meant to be a joyous beginning, a celebration of new life, had become a devastating end, a stark reminder of the destructive power of betrayal and the enduring scars it leaves behind, a wound that might never truly heal. The once vibrant fairy lights in the backyard now seemed like mocking embers, remnants of a dream that had turned into a nightmare. Lessons learned. The case of Sarah, Liam, and Eleanor serves as a stark reminder of how quickly love and trust can unravel when confronted with betrayal and deceit, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. The cost of secrets. Eleanor and Liam's clandestine affair, fueled by individual desires and hidden motives, ultimately destroyed not only their own lives but also the lives of those around them. Secrets, especially those involving profound betrayal, rarely remain buried forever, and often erupt with devastating consequences, like a hidden fault line rupturing. Be honest and transparent even when it is difficult, for the truth, however painful, is often less destructive than the lies that conceal it. The burden of a lie grows heavier with each passing day, eventually crushing the one who carries it. The illusion of control. Liam's belief that he could manipulate Eleanor and Sarah for his own financial gain proved to be a fatal miscalculation. His intricate web of lies, carefully spun to ensnare his victims, ultimately ensnared him. No one can truly control the emotions or reactions of others, and attempts to do so often backfire catastrophically, leading to unforeseen and tragic outcomes. The illusion of power can be a dangerous delusion. The power of trauma. Sarah's reaction, though extreme, was a direct response to an unimaginable betrayal, a profound violation of her trust and her sense of reality. The psychological impact of such a shock can drive individuals to acts they would never have contemplated under normal circumstances, pushing them beyond their emotional breaking point. This highlights the importance of recognizing and addressing emotional trauma, and seeking help when faced with overwhelming emotional distress. The wounds of the mind can be as devastating as those of the body. The complexity of forgiveness. The verdict of not guilty for Sarah does not erase the pain or the act itself. Forgiveness, both for oneself and for others, is a long and arduous journey, especially when trust has been so profoundly shattered. It is not a single event, but a process, often marked by setbacks and renewed pain. It reminds us that justice, while important, does not always equate to healing, and that true peace often lies in the acceptance of what cannot be changed. The importance of communication. Had there been open and honest communication within the family, perhaps some of these tragic events could have been averted. Resentments, desires, and fears, when left unaddressed, can fester and lead to destructive outcomes, poisoning relationships from within. Speaking one's truth, even when it is uncomfortable, can prevent far greater pain in the long run. The silence of unspoken truths often screams the loudest in the end. If you found this story compelling, please like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more true crime narratives. What would you have done if you were Sarah in that moment of shocking discovery? Share your opinions below. Your perspective matters.